State-sponsored abductions by North Korea have been in practice since 1950, and according to some accounts, almost 100,000 South Koreans were abducted by North Korea during the Korean War, and over 3,800 South Koreans were snatched after that war. While most were eventually returned, the fate of more than 500 South Koreans remains unknown. Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today we meet with a documentary film director who has shed fresh light on North Korea's alarming abductions of foreign nationals. I have with me Scott Christopherson live on the line. Director Christopherson, Scott, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk about our documentary series and the issues involved.
Right, thank you so much for making the time. Let's dive right in then. How did you first learn about North Korea's atrocious abductions, and how did you also come across the story of Choi Sung-yong's father's abduction? What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I first learned about North Korean abductions through Mr. Choi Sung-yong's story. There were a couple different articles in U.S. newspapers and the New York Times, I believe in 2010, and then in the Washington Post in 2013. I came across these a little bit later, and I really didn't know much about the North Korean abduction issue, where North Koreans are abducting South Koreans and also Japanese citizens. But by sheer numbers, a lot more abducting a lot more South Koreans. Reading those articles, I found Mr. Choi Sung-yong really compelling and fascinating. Here's a guy whose father was abducted in 1967. He was a fishing boat captain, and previous to that also worked under General MacArthur doing clandestine operations during the Korean War, and then went missing and is still technically missing. There have been some reports that he might have been killed or executed, but Mr. Choi doesn't know for sure and is still searching for his father, who now I think would be in his hundreds, very old. But I know Mr. Choi made a pact with his mother that he would find his father or find the bones of his father and bring them back to the proper burial place.
Right, his father Choi Mo, of course. Scott, what compelled you then to center a documentary entirely on the broader plight of North Korea's atrocious abductions, do you think?
Well, I think as a filmmaker, I definitely look at human stories, personal stories. And so I was primarily focused and interested in Mr. Choi because he's so passionate. Usually I look for passionate characters who are obsessed with things, or characters who are underdogs, right? Who are climbing a proverbial big mountain, something that's almost insurmountable. And in Mr. Choi, I found that character, someone who is doing things that the South Korean government won't even do. He's taken upon himself to do something almost impossible, in my opinion, right? Here's a single man kind of going rogue and saying, well, if the South Korean government's not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And that, to me, someone who's willing to put their life at risk, to put aside, their career at times, to even put their own family at risk. There have been assassination attempts on Mr. Choi. That, to me, was very compelling. And also, as a fact, he's done it, right? He has successfully helped at least 9 abductees escape. And so not only is he passionate about it, he's yielding results. In one article, he talked about how he barricaded himself in the soon-to-be president of South Korea until that president passed a bill demanding to help abductees. So I found that compelling. Someone who is willing to do all of that. And I guess I've always been fascinated with North Korea, with it being a hermit kingdom. My grandfather was in the FBI, and he was kind of a role model of mine, and he had experience in World War II, and was also an FBI agent during the Korean War, though didn't work in the Korean War as much. But I've always been interested in that region of the world as well.
Right, I see. Scott, walk us through your journey of making this documentary. So how did you reach out to Choi Sung-yong about his story? And how did you go about setting up a team to undertake this project, which I'm sure would have involved some risks? As you mentioned, Choi himself did face a number of assassination threats.
Yeah, well, initially, after reading some materials about Mr. Choi, we got in touch with a contact in South Korea, got his email, and started communicating with him. And then I have a trusted team that I work on all my films. They're based here locally. They're people that I know and love and trust, and who've essentially made all of my films with me. And I took them, we work in small groups for various reasons. One is we don't want to be noticed as much. We want to work quickly and secretly if needs be. So, we're working in very, very small teams, be it 3 people, sometimes 2 people, sometimes just me. So after getting a hold of Mr. Choi, we flew to South Korea with my small team, and interviewed him in his small office. And when you're in there in his office, it is lined with people who are victims of the abduction issue, and it's not big, and so it's very compelling to see all of these photos, both of his father and of people who he's rescued, as well as people who are still missing. Once we interviewed him, I was all the more compelled and motivated to really follow his story. He is really well spoken. He's got this deep, powerful voice and speaks with authority. In one of the articles in the Washington Post or New York Times, they compared him to an old prize fighter, and I think that rings true. He knows what he's doing, and when he speaks, you tend to listen.
Right, so Scott, Choi Sung-yong was unable to locate the remains of his own father, but he was able to, like you mentioned, secure the return of several other abductees. Were you able to interview a number of perhaps an abductee who was rescued by Mr. Choi Sung-yong?
Yeah, I was. I'm not great with South Korean names. I don't speak Korean, but we were able to interview and meet with several people that Mr. Choi rescued and helped escape. And they were beyond grateful. There's a clip that he showed us while we were in the room with him of being reunited with his wife. I think he was captured and lived for over 30 years, and his wife, of course, who was living in South Korea, thought he was dead. Mr. Choi worked to help him escape via China, and he now supports the abductees' family union with great zeal. I know that the majority of abductees, the 8 people that he has helped escape, are very appreciative, though I know sometimes he's helped an abductee escape without their knowledge or without their wanting to escape. So there are some controversies there with the work that he's done. But you can sense with the people that he has saved that their gratitude is great, and they really look up to Mr. Choi and are thankful for what he's done.
Right. Scott, moving forward then, what perhaps shocked you the most while documenting this particular story?
Well, I think what shocked me the most was I mentioned it somewhat earlier here, but that Mr. Choi is doing this on his own. It's that to me was just mind-boggling, was fascinating, was awe-inspiring that he was taking it upon himself to do this without experience. It's not like he was trained in espionage. He had done his time in the military, but he essentially is teaching himself how to create a network of spy runners and people that he works with in North Korea. And I was blown away. I thought, wow, would I have the courage to do this as just an everyday citizen in America? Probably not. I mean, I guess the most I'm willing to do is follow someone as a filmmaker who's doing that. So that was what really shocked me first. And then hearing about his assassination attempt, or one of the assassination attempts, made me realize, oh, there's a lot at stake, right? He's putting his life at stake here. And that person who tried to assassinate him is now in South Korean prison. And I know Mr. Che has visited that person and has even supported him. I think in Korean culture and in Mr. Che's life, forgiveness is key and is important. And he forgave that man that tried to kill him and has even offered him support while in prison. So I found kind of that dynamic also really shocking and compelling.
Right, I see. Aside from the shocking aspects of your coverage then, Scott, what were some of your more memorable moments, would you say? Apart from, of course, hearing about stories of loved ones being able to reunite back here in South Korea after a long period of abduction in North Korea, of course.
Memorable moments with Mr. Che, or just in the making of the documentary?
In both, and Mr. Che as well as the making of the documentary.
Yeah. I've been working on this series for 8 years. It's been a long time, so there's a lot. I think one that stands out is traveling to, it's the island where Mr. Che's father went missing, or he went from that island. It's the island that's closest to North Korea. I'm blanking on the name. But retracing his father's steps and going back to where Choi last saw his father. We rode on a ferry for about 6 hours to get there and spent several nights there, kind of reminiscing about his dad. And that was really, really difficult and powerful at the same time. Recently, Mr. Che flew out to Washington, D.C. This was last November of 2022, I believe. And he went to the Korean War Monument, and Mr. Che is a very respectful, reverent, really takes these things seriously. And at the Korean War Monument, he knelt down and bowed down to the soldiers there. There's the monument shows, I want to say, probably 20 to 30 soldiers cast in iron. There it is. There's a picture of that monument, and right at the front of that, Mr. Choi, we filmed him, and he, just out of his own volition, knelt down in front of it and started paying respect to those who fought in the war. And everyone around there, just kind of stopped in their tracks and was silent. It was like silent for a while, because they could tell that both the Mr. Choi here was paying respect to loved ones that he had experience with the Korean War. That was really great. And I think visually kind of showed how Mr. Che felt. A lot of memorable moments we had were in his office, where he shared a lot of things with us. Some things I can't share. I can't even share with all of you. I can't share on camera because they're that they would affect what work he's doing and affect his operation. So some things I'm sworn to secrecy. Though if you watch the documentary series, I think you'll have a greater, deeper understanding and even an exciting understanding of what he does and how he does it. We've been lucky enough to get access to him and also earn his trust. And that's taken a long, long time, like I said, 8 years.
Right, I see. And speaking about the documentary, Scott, what was your editing process like, I wonder? I mean, did you seek to simply share the facts as they were? Or does your documentary perhaps seek to direct public sentiment to sympathize with a particular group of people?
It's a great question. I tend to believe that no documentary film is objective. I think it's impossible to be objective in any way. That said, you can have the impression of objectivity. You can fake objectivity. You can show the facts, but really when you show the facts as they are, that's the director or the team choosing which facts to show. So in reality, it's always going to be my perspective or my team's perspective. That said, I didn't come into this film with a big agenda. That's never my approach. I tend to not want to lean one way or the other or be politically driven. And so what I do is I try to focus on the human stories at hand and let them tell the stories for themselves, let Mr. Che tell the story. And editing, we're still in the midst of that. We've edited 5 of the 6 episodes, and that's a ton of work. That changes over time. And of course, the series isn't being released yet. We're still waiting on a few things as there are active investigations going on and active, operations in the works. So because of that, we have to be careful about when we release things.
Right, I see. Scott, can we hope to see your documentary within this year then?
That's the goal. I really want to finish this documentary this year and release it. We haven't. We're in talks with several big companies like Netflix, like HBO Max, and we haven't committed to someone yet because we're waiting on certain things. Though, my films have won big awards like Best Documentary at South by Southwest, and I can say with confidence this is the best work I've ever done or been involved with. So I think that's saying a lot about the complexity and the quality of this series.
Right. And that being said, Scott, what are you hoping to relate to the audience through your documentary? I mean, eventually when they do watch it, when we are able to watch your work, what do you hope we'll take away from it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope audiences, as they watch this, are able to be inspired by Mr. Che. I want them to feel his passion, to internalize his passion, and have the courage to do things in their own lives. Take the bull by the horns and be passionate about whatever it is in their own lives. I want people to learn about what's going on in North Korea. I mean, this is the abduction issue is a small issue of what's happening in North Korea. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to expose some of the big issues with North Korea. I mean, there's a Holocaust, there's a genocide going on in North Korea now. And that's something I've really learned as I've studied this for 8 years. I've read every book I can get my hands on, not just related to the abduction issue, but anything related to Korean history and North Korea. And, hundreds of thousands and millions of people are being killed or sent to concentration camps. So, we also are looking, in addition to the abduction issue, what's going on in North Korea. Obviously, I think that's important for context. You have to understand North Korea and its politics, and the nuclear issue, as well as the genocide and the terror of power that is the Kim Jong-un family.
Right, of course. And your documentary, of course, is going to raise greater interest and perhaps, of course, awareness of the situation there up north. Scott, are there any other projects that you plan on working on after the airing of your latest documentary? I understand the question comes a bit early, though.
Yeah, no, I'm currently working on a few short films in Thailand. I'm fluent in Thai and Lao, and so I've spent a lot of time there. I'm doing some films on Hmong shamans, on like various religious groups in northeastern Thailand. So yeah, I'm always working on several different things. That's one of the small things I'm working on. And I think after this, I'll plan to do another series, like a lengthier series, but it's very draining.
I'm sure it
and
is.
yeah, so probably take a bit of a break and then start on another series.
Right. Scott, aside from being a documentary film director, you are also a professor guiding students who hope to perhaps walk the path you are walking yourself. What are your words of advice to those who are seeking to become documentary film directors?
Yeah, I love this question. I would say to students or other people who want to be doc filmmakers, when you find a story that you believe in, that you have faith in, that you think is compelling, you've got to take a leap of faith and go for it. You probably don't have money, but you have time, hopefully. And if you believe in a story, don't give up until you tell that story, because you'll find the money. If it's a good story, you'll find the money. And if you really put the time and effort in, talent is not as important as work ethic and believing in something. So I think that's the main thing I would say is, believe in yourself, believe in that story that you have to tell, and don't give up until it's done.
Right. I think you stand as tangible testimony of the wisdom of the words. Where there is a will, there is a way. Scott Christopherson, film director, thank you so much for making the time to join us live at this hour.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed chatting with you.
Right. Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.